Hello, my name is DELA Peña and I will be talking about the figures of speech in poetry. But first, let's read our learning objectives for today. At the end of the lesson, the students are expected to identify and explain various figures of speech used in poetry by answering questions, appreciate the creative use of language in poetry, and develop a personal connection to figurative language by expressing their thoughts and feelings. Analyze a poem to identify the use of figures of speech and discuss their impact on the poem's meaning and emotional effect through an activity. But first, let's define what is figures of speech. Figures of speech are a very important tool for us to write or to communicate more creatively. It adds a unique effect for our communication. And there are actually two types when we use figures of speech. The two ways are the literal meaning and figuratively. The literal language actually tells us exactly what is our message. For example, it's raining. This describes rain as it is, like it actually rains. But on the other hand, we have the figurative language. This goes beyond the literal meaning. It makes comparisons to create deeper meanings to our message. Like for example, the world is a stage. This doesn't mean that the world is the real stage, wherein it means like life is like a performance. We have our own roles to play. So in poetry, writer actually uses figures of speech to make expressions that is more creative, emotional, and memorable. This figures of speech also helps poets to create vivid images to their listeners and to create emotions in the minds of their readers or the listeners. And today, we will be looking out at some of the most commonly used figures of speech used in poetry. The first one we have simile. Simile is a comparison using the words as, like, or than. So if those keywords are present, we can call that figures of speech in poetry as simile. For example, from the sonnet 130 by William Shakespeare, my mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. So we use like and than in this uh, poem. Next, we have the metaphor. A metaphor actually directly compares two unrelated things by saying one is the other. For example, The Sun Rising by John Donne, wherein it said that she's all states and all princess. I, nothing else is. In this metaphor, the speaker compares his lover to all states, meaning she represents the whole world to him. Next, we have personification. A personification is a figure of speech wherein it gives human qualities to non-human things. For example, from Storm Fear by Robert Frost. It said here that when the wind works against us in the dark and whispers with a sort of stippled bark. Wherein here, the wind is described as if it can work and whisper. These are the actions of human or an animal. The next one we have is the hyperbole or hyperbole. A hyperbole is an exaggeration used for emphasis or dramatic effect. Let's have our example from A Red, Red Rose by Robert Burns. It said here that, till the seas gang dry, my dear, and the rocks melt with the sun. Of course, seas don't dry up, and rocks don't melt in the sun. These exaggerations actually expresses deep and enduring love in that poem. Next, we have understatement. An understatement is a figure of speech that presents something as less important or serious than it really is. For example, from Sylvia Plath's poem named Tulips. Here, it is said that tulips are too excitable. It is winter here. Winter is harsh and still, but the speaker minimizes the tulip's presence, wherein it treats them unoverly lively during winter. Last, we have alliteration. In alliteration, it is the repetition of similar consonant sounds, usually at the beginning of the words, to create a musical or rhythmic effect. For example, from the Key Beauty by Manley Hopkins. Fresh charcoal, chestnuts, falls, finches, wings, landscape plotted and pieced. The repeated sounds create somehow a lyrical flow that enhances the poem's beauty. No. And to summarize, these figures of speech can make our poetry more creative, more expressive, and enjoyable. No. These poets who wrote them communicated very powerfully in ideas in ways that it touches the imagination and the emotion of the readers. They understand these tools on how to use these tools to appreciate literature more deeply, and I have learned that using this figures of speech can recognize the artistry behind every line. These are the list of my references for the information that I have used, and for the following, figures of speech will be reported by my teammate. Thank you.